On Sunday, this coming weekend, a rock roughly the length of 7 football fields laid end to end will streak past our planet at tens of thousands of miles an hour. It's real. It's being tracked right now by NASA. And its size alone is enough to put it in a category astronomers specifically flag for continuous monitoring. So before you scroll past another headline calling this a near miss, let's actually look at the numbers, because the truth is both less frightening and more interesting than the panic headlines suggest. This is the real story of Asteroid 1173561, also known as 2000 YV-137, what NASA has actually confirmed about its size and path, and what potentially hazardous actually means when scientists use that specific term. Let's start with the basic facts, because they matter more than the dramatic framing. On August 9th, 2026, this asteroid, formerly designated 173561, 2000 YV-137, will make its closest approach to Earth, passing at a distance of approximately 5 million kilometers, roughly 1 million miles. NASA has published an interactive map tracking the object's approach, and its size has been estimated at around 756 meters across, nearly half a mile wide, large enough that if you laid it down along a running track, it would stretch well past the length of 7 full soccer pitches placed end to end. That size is exactly why this particular object gets flagged more prominently than the dozens of smaller asteroids that pass by Earth every single week, largely unnoticed. NASA and other space agencies use a specific formal classification for objects like this, potentially hazardous. That term sounds alarming on its own, and it's worth explaining precisely what it means, because the definition is more technical and less ominous than it sounds. An asteroid earns the potentially hazardous label if it meets 2 specific criteria simultaneously. It must be larger than roughly 150 meters across, and its orbit must bring it within about 5 million kilometers of Earth's own orbital path at some point. Asteroid 1173561 clearly qualifies on both counts. At 756 meters, it's significantly larger than the minimum size threshold, and its closest approach distance of roughly 5 million kilometers falls well inside that 5 million kilometer boundary that triggers the classification. But here's the crucial distinction that headlines often blur, deliberately or not. Potentially hazardous is a classification describing an asteroid's size and orbital proximity to Earth's general neighborhood in space. It is not, and was never intended to be, a prediction of actual imminent danger or any kind of collision warning. It's closer to a formal filing category, a flag scientists use to say this object is big enough and passes close enough to our general orbital region that it deserves continuous, careful tracking, rather than this object is currently on any kind of collision course with our planet. NASA has been explicit and direct on this exact point regarding this specific asteroid. The agency is confident that the passage of 173561 does not pose any threat of collision with our planet. That's not a hedge or a cautious guess. It's the direct output of precise orbital calculations, based on years of accumulated tracking data on this specific object since it was first discovered and cataloged back in the year 2000, giving astronomers over 2 decades of observational data to refine exactly where it's going to be, and exactly how far from Earth it will actually pass. To put the actual distance in real perspective, since numbers like 5 million kilometers can be hard to visualize on their own, that's roughly 13 times farther away than the Moon. If you imagine the distance between Earth and the Moon as a single, familiar unit of measurement, this asteroid will pass more than a dozen times farther out than that already enormous gap. It is, by any reasonable definition, a distant flyby, not a close call in the way that phrase implies danger. The potentially hazardous label exists specifically to justify exactly the kind of careful, ongoing monitoring NASA is currently doing. Precisely so that if any future orbital calculation ever did suggest genuine risk, scientists would already have decades of tracking data in hand to respond quickly and accurately rather than starting from scratch. It's also worth understanding that this particular flyby isn't remotely unusual in the broader context of how often objects like this pass by our planet. NASA's Center for Near-Earth Object Studies, known as CNEOs, continuously tracks thousands of near-Earth objects, asteroids, and comets whose orbits bring them into our planet's general cosmic neighborhood. According to NASA's own Asteroid Watch dashboard, which the agency updates regularly, multiple objects make close approaches to Earth in any given week, most of them far smaller and far less scrutinized than this one. In just the same general window surrounding this particular flyby, NASA's dashboard listed several other objects passing by, including 2026 OE1, an asteroid roughly 55 meters across, about the size of a passenger jet, which passed at a distance of approximately 93 million kilometers, in 2024 RE-10, a smaller object around 23 meters wide. Neither of those objects generated anywhere near the same level of public attention as 17.3561, largely because their smaller size keeps them below the specific threshold that earns the more attention-grabbing, potentially hazardous designation, even though, statistically, smaller objects like these are actually detected passing Earth far more frequently. This pattern, genuine, harmless flybys generating outsized public alarm purely because of formal technical terminology, isn't new. The asteroid Apophis offers a particularly instructive comparison precisely because it went through an almost identical cycle of alarm followed by reassurance, playing out over several years rather than a single week. When Apophis was first discovered, calculations initially suggested a genuine, non-trivial possibility of an Earth impact during a close approach in 2029. That early uncertainty made headlines around the world, and rightfully so, since the initial risk estimate genuinely warranted serious attention. But as astronomers gathered more observational data and refined the calculation of its orbit with much greater precision, that 2029 impact possibility was completely ruled out by the end of December 2004, based on additional archival images that extended how far back into the past its orbit could be reliably traced. A smaller secondary concern lingered afterward: the theoretical possibility that Apophis might pass through an extremely narrow gravitational keyhole during its 2029 flyby, a region of space so precise that passing through it could set up a future impact exactly 7 years later in 2036. That secondary risk kept Apophis flagged at level 1 on the Torino Impact Hazard Scale, a scale astronomers use specifically to communicate asteroid risk to the public in consistent terms for roughly 2 additional years. But by August of 2006, further refined calculations determined that the probability of Apophis actually passing through that specific keyhole was negligible, and its hazard rating was formally lowered to 0. That entire multi-year story illustrates something genuinely important about how asteroid risk assessment actually works in practice. Initial calculations, based on limited observational data, can occasionally suggest real cause for concern, but astronomy has a powerful self-correcting mechanism built directly into the process. Every additional night of observation, every additional data point gathered about an object's precise position and velocity sharpens the accuracy of its calculated orbit. Risk estimates that look alarming with limited data very often shrink dramatically or disappear completely once more observations come in and scientists can calculate the object's true path with much greater confidence. Apophis went from a genuine, serious concern to a fully cleared, zero-risk object once enough. Tracking data existed to make that determination with real confidence, precisely the same process now playing out on a much smaller and less dramatic scale with asteroid 1163561's upcoming flyby. That broader system of detection and tracking is exactly why an object like 173561, despite its considerable size, isn't cause for public concern today. Since its discovery in 2000, this specific asteroid has had over 2 decades of consistent observation, giving astronomers more than enough data to calculate its orbit with a level of precision that leaves essentially no meaningful uncertainty about where it will actually pass this weekend. The same infrastructure responsible for identifying it as potentially hazardous in the first place. Continuous, methodical astronomical surveys specifically designed to catch exactly this category of object is the same infrastructure that has already confirmed with genuine confidence that this particular flyby poses no danger whatsoever. There's a genuinely reassuring lesson buried inside a story like this one once you look past the alarming headline. The fact that NASA can confidently specifically tell you days in advance that a nearly half-mile wide asteroid will pass a million kilometers from Earth without incident is itself a remarkable demonstration of exactly how far planetary defense tracking capability has advanced. Decades ago, an object this size might have gone entirely undetected until it was already visible in the sky, with no advance warning and no ability to calculate its path with any real precision. Today, thanks to sustained, methodical, decades-long observation programs, astronomers can track objects like 173561 continuously, refine their orbits with extraordinary accuracy, and tell the public well in advance, and with genuine confidence, exactly how close something is going to come and exactly why there's nothing to worry about. So should you be worried about this particular asteroid? Based on everything NASA has confirmed using more than 2 decades of tracking data and precise orbital calculations, the honest answer is straightforwardly no. This is a real, large, genuinely notable object, and it's entirely reasonable to find its size and speed impressive, even a little humbling, the same way you might feel looking at footage of a massive storm system from a safe distance. But potentially hazardous is a size and proximity classification, not a warning of actual danger. And in this specific, well-documented case, the science is clear, consistent, and reassuring. 173561 will pass more than 13 times farther away than the Moon, exactly as calculated, exactly as expected, with no threat to Earth at all. If this story helped you tell the difference between a genuine astronomical milestone and manufactured internet panic, hit subscribe, because more of these headlines are coming, and it's always worth checking what the actual numbers say.